Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. And I suppose the biggest update that we've done most recently, we've just yesterday finished our last load of hay deliveries to the community. So I don't know if you remember back in 2019, we had another drought situation, and back then National Parks gave us the go ahead to feed the animals. It actually was probably worse drought back then than it is at the moment. We're starting to see some animals die. There's been a few buffalo and a few elephant. Mostly, well, we saw a few calves in the last couple of weeks dying, and also a few adults. So there's probably been maybe as many as 10 elephant that we know of, and several buffalo, but it's not as bad as we really expected to see it this time of year, considering how it last rained in February. So it's been a long time. Well, I say it last rained in February, but it actually rained 10 days ago. But it was so dry and it was such a short spell of rain that everything's dried up now. And it's, it didn't affect the food availability, especially for the grazers. So, but anyway, back in that 2019 spell, we were given authority to feed the animals, and I forget how many bales of hay we delivered, but if we put a monetary value to it, it was about $30,000 worth of hay we brought in to feed the buffalo and the elephants and anything that would eat it. So we decided as a board of directors with Bushlife Conservancy, we thought, well, we've done some good fundraising, so instead of, if we can't feed the animals, and we've been doing more and more community work, let's consider feeding the community's cattle along the boundaries of the park. And so we went ahead with that decision, and we basically it's all along the southern boundary of the park. And there's 4 areas. They're quite geographically separate, but we managed to purchase and transport about 10,000 bales of hay, which each bale of hay is about 35 pounds or so, maybe 40 pounds. And depending, I mean, they're all vary in size, but 35 to 40 pounds of hay. So each cow will probably eat half a bale if it was a good feeding. So we figured we fed about 20,000 cows. And if we think that there's been no rain since late February, early March, and also there's been quite a few bushfires in the area. So the bushfires have burnt any available grazing that was around, and quite a lot of it not only in the community area but also extended into the park. So people have been looking for grazing in the park area. Excuse me. So it's been a double-edged sword in that we've been able to help the communities in the areas that we've been working for the last about 5 years, I suppose, but also to encourage people not to take their cattle into the wildlife area and to keep them out of the park. The rains are really imminent. We've been sitting here watching thunderstorms around us for probably the last week, and we haven't had rain we had a thunderstorm about, like I said, 10, 12 days ago, but we haven't really had any. There's been a few showers up in the Harare area, and that is what we call high veld. Down in the Zambezi Valley, we're in the low veld. So our grass grows from seed every year. So we haven't had enough grass to germinate the seed. But up in the high veld and on the edge of the escarpment, where the communities live, the grass grows from a rootstock every year. So that little bit of rain that we expecting any time now, should start, and especially where it's been burnt, should start growing. So those people will have some relief for their livestock. But having said that, we haven't had a lot of stock killing predators like lions and leopard, for example. There was one leopard that has probably killed as many as 100 goats, but we haven't managed to catch that one. And so that's going to be a project for the future, try and catch that guy and relocate it back into the park. A lot of relocations don't work, but the ones that we've done, totally by coincidence, the animals have moved back into the area. So we might move them 100 kilometers or 200 Ks away from where we captured them, and they'll come back towards the area, not necessarily back to the same area, but close by. Sometimes not that close, but they'll move from where we originally relocate them to. But we've had success in the sense that they haven't gone back to stock killing. So whatever experience they went through being captured in a cage and translocated, even though they're drugged and released, it was enough of a shock to their system not to go back to stock killing. So in many respects, we've had a lot of success on that side. But the reason why I bring that up is because of the drought, we're seeing the game viewing has been great. Mark watched the 4 lionesses that hang around this part of the park called the Car Park Girls. I don't know if anybody remembers that name being used, but they were seen yesterday catching a buffalo. And so we're seeing lots of good predators around, good leopard. And then the dogs we saw, we've got a group of guests in at the moment from the UK. So most of our guests, most of our donors to Bushlife Conservancy are Americans. If that's how our clientele has worked out over the last 20, 30 years. But we've got a group in the moment who are from the UK, and they're also Bushlife donors. They're out on the drive at the moment. But when they arrived at Mana West Airstrip, their dogs were right there at the airstrip, literally 100 meters from where the plane landed. So we got to see the dogs then. But unfortunately, one of the puppies is missing. So we did have 3 pups. Now we're down to 2. Total number of dogs in the pack is down to 11. So that's always, I was hoping that we'll get through this dry season with keeping the 3 pups, because we've had 3 since July. So they've done really well until about a week ago when we lost 1 pup. But anyway, I was talking about the communities and the grass and availability up there, and the lack current, which is quite a good respite, is not many predators killing livestock. But I'm sure that will change. So that was a long story about feeding hay to the cattle. Like I say, hopefully with the rains being imminent, we won't. I'm sure people will ask us for more, but we are not going to. With the rains imminent, I'm hoping we don't have to. We won't have to be forced into getting more food. We pretty much spent our budget. It was about $35,000 we spent on the hay, and it had a big impact. It was very successful. People loved it. They were very grateful. I've got loads and loads of videos from Freedom, who is out there distributing it in Shona, which you wouldn't understand, but it's lots of gratitude and thanks coming to everybody for the delivery of the grass. Yeah. So if anybody's got any questions on that at this stage while we're on that topic.
That's marvelous. What an outreach.
Yeah, I think it's going to have big, long-lasting effect on our relationship with the community. Like I say, we've only been going for 5 years doing community work. Our focus was obviously elephant poaching, and with the touch wood, the um, the decrease in elephant poaching that we've been observing for the last 5 years has given us opportunity to extend our area of operation into the community and do a lot of stuff there. So we're hoping that will build our relationship with the community a lot.
Yeah, how many like would you say people or villages have you impacted by doing that? Is a good fair amount of people, I guess, would be just trying to get an
Yeah,
idea.
well, like I say, Bob, we've fed about 20,000 cows. I forget
Oh wow.
the number
Okay.
of cattle that are in the area, but
Yeah.
the total community, the people living in the area, it's about 80,000 people.
It's a
And
it's a big
so if
impact.
we fed that many cattle, we're definitely impacting on a lot of families.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So
Nick,
next
Nick, would you
is,
say that when the predators take the livestock, is the livestock, sorry if I missed this, but is the livestock usually, is it where it's supposed to be, or is it creeping into places where it's not, into like park areas where it's not supposed to be?
Yeah, that's the catch. Is I don't know if you remember last year there was a pride of lions that were in the area, but they were living in the wildlife area, or that's where they would retreat to. But at night they'd come into the villages and kill a cow or a donkey,
Mhm.
and then go back again into a little valley that was part of the wildlife area. But it's such a where the where the communities are along the boundary of the park, it's the escarpment. Which so when you're looking at camp and you see the Zambian mountains, you can imagine all the little rivers and rivulets and little hills and mountains going back there. It's really rugged country. So there's lots of places for the animals to hide. And then it's not too far to come to a village and then grab a cow and then run back into a little valley or a gully and hide away. So there's been a lot of that. But we've actually got the Danish church aid people who we are also partnering with in the community in camp at the moment. They're here with their boss from Copenhagen doing a talk, and that is something that we're talking about is responsible herding. A lot of the cattle are herded into the park because there's less grazing pressure there, and they we get a call saying, "Oh, lions ate my cow," or "Where's the cow? It was in the park," or it was the guy doesn't want to herd it back to his village, so he ties it to a tree in the park. So he thinks he can come back and get it in the morning. Comes back in the morning, it's eaten by hyenas, and that's a problem we can't really deal with, except for trying to. It's a step-by-step thing, a process of trying to help people in a roundabout way to look after their livestock in the correct manner. But some of these, like the lions that we had last year, towards the end of last year, that were killing livestock, they were actually ripping bricks out of a building to get into a goat kraal. So it was, normally a kraal is just some tree posts stuck in the ground so the cows can't get out, but the lions can see through it. In this case, the lions couldn't see through the brick building, but they were ripping their way through the bricks to get into it. So this pride of lions was a big problem, which ended up, there were 7 of them. We ended up translocating 4 and shooting 3. So it's not always a win-win situation.
got a question. When I read about the in your newsletter about the leopards eating so many goats and the lions and with the villagers, I was thinking how patient the villagers must be to lose 100 goats and not
Yeah.
want to kill them themselves, do they have the means to poison or shoot the leopards or the lions themselves, or they dependent upon, or they just trust other, you guys or the authorities to deal with it, or they just don't, they can't afford any of those kind of preventative measures
Yeah,
to
a lot of the above. There's can't afford it. They don't have weapons, but poisoning does become a problem, and it's not, you know, a leopard could be more targeted, but things like hyenas. We had a case where um, a carcass had been killed by hyenas, and people went and poisoned it, and about six, 7 hyenas were killed, but also a whole bunch of other animals that were feeding on the carcass. Little, smaller stuff living in the area. So, that's a normal story of poisoning. But generally, with that, like with that leopard, that it's so sneaky and so clever, it's almost impossible to catch. But we did have we had a technical hitch in that last year, whereas was as a non-vet, I've been privileged to have what we call a dangerous drugs license in this country, where normally in any other country in the world, only a vet can use the drugs that we use for game capture and basically game capture, or snared animals or injured animals, that kind of thing, which we've dealt with over the years. And there's been a push by the certain medical associations and some of the vets involved to prevent non-vets like myself getting the license. So while this leopard that has been nicknamed the Ghost has been killing all these goats, we've been unable to do anything because I haven't had the license to do it.
Oh,
So that has
wow.
been a snag. But thankfully, my license came through. Only round about, I think it was the 18th or 19th of September that it came through. And that was when we had a collaring project planned. And so my license came through just in time. And we've only just got through that. And so we're looking at, we're watching this leopard to see where he's going to strike next. And then now we can prepare to set a cage and bait it and try to catch him. Sometimes it takes weeks or months to catch a leopard like this, because you never know where he's going to come again. It's not like he's coming to the same village and, eating the same goat kraal every evening or each week. They vary. And like I say, the terrain is so difficult with all the valleys and gullies and rivers going through that, it could pop out in any place. And it's virtually impossible to predict where it's going to come out. We just got to be very lucky that it's going to come back to either, sometimes these leopards get into a problem and might kill 4 or 5 goats in one go. And then quite possibly it would come back to that, knowing that it's killed that many animals in this feed around. So you might be able to bait it and catch it when it comes back to something like that.
Does the state government provide compensation for the loss?
No, that's something that is not engaged in. We have done some of that ourselves as Bushlife. Like one of the leopards that we caught a couple of years ago now was also very notorious. We had accounted for 72 goats that it had killed, and then where we captured it, it had killed some crazy number, like 10 or 12 goats in one kraal. It just went crazy on a killing spree. So we compensated. She was a widower. She was a widow. Her husband had died several years ago. So we felt it was, I don't know, we compensated her for her loss.
Yeah.
Just because we had success with the incident. We captured that leopard.
Do you
And then do you translocate that leopard, or what happens to the leopard? And if so, where do you move it?
Yeah. So in that case, if you look at research on these kind of things, a lot of the time the leopards, especially leopard, will come back to the area and carry on what they're doing. In this case, we translocated. There was a female. We translocated her. I don't know if you can hear a lion calling from the Zambian side. A bit faint. Anyway. Okay. There was we moved her probably about 150 kilometers from where she was captured into the park, and it took her about 4 or 5 days till she was back in the area, but she never went back to stock killing. We put a GPS radio collar on her. We could monitor where she was going, and she never crossed back into the village and stayed in the wildlife area. So that was really interesting, and we've done 3 or 4 leopards now in total, and all of them we've been lucky that they've done exactly what I just described, not come back and not picked up the habit of stock killing. So there was something, they remember the incident, or the incident was traumatic enough for them, being caught in a cage, maybe staying there the whole night, depending on when they were captured, until they were darted, and it was enough to shock them not to do it again.
But if I understood, you say you're gonna, in the future, you'll collar them so you can track them. Is that the idea?
Yeah, we've done that in the past with 3 leopards, and we've done about, well, 4 different groups of lion with 4 different collars. So we've been able to monitor their movements. And that was when I just mentioned earlier that we had to shoot 2 or 3 of those lions because they came back to the area, and they did go back to stock killing, and they were shot. So we try to give them as much chance as possible to change their habits, but it doesn't always work out.
What do you bait them with the goats, or?
Yeah, normally with what they've killed. So that's where the compensation comes in now, because if the farmer can recover the meat of what was killed, then, because he knows he's not going to get compensation from national parks, for example, then he'll try to recover that meat and either dry it and save it, or try to sell it, or whatever. And so, but if we get word of it quick enough, we'll tell him that we'll buy the goat from him. So he gets compensated for the loss, and then we use that goat as or a cow. You know, sometimes it's lions and it's a cow, or hyenas, and then we'll pay for it. Otherwise, the family will use them.
Well, it reminds me of the movie The Ghost in the Darkness, and I view you as Michael Douglas there in the movie.
Yeah.
That's funny, David.
Nick, I'm pretending to be at camp. Do you recognize the picture behind
Oh.
me?
I didn't, yeah.
I put the camera on the bar and took a photograph.
Yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Nick, I apologize. We're in Ohio and we're with the grandkids.
Okay.
I have to go catch a soccer game, but I didn't want to miss it.
Okay, good. Excellent. Enjoy.
Good
Thanks for
seeing
tuning
you.
in, Bob.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry
good to
I
see you.
have to
Bob.
run.
Bye,
Right.
Ginger.
No problem.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
I was lucky enough, everybody, Nick knows this, but I was lucky enough to be in camp when Bob and Ginger were there at the same time. So it was just a great time.
Any update on the baby elephant work that you'd been doing, Nick?
No, not really. Still waiting for, well, for those who didn't hear what we did was, we've been seeing what seemed to us as quite a high incidence of lame baby elephants. And so we managed to, first of all, secure some collars, which we did back in January. And permits were a big issue. We were delayed a lot by permits and availability of vets and that kind of thing. But anyway, eventually we managed to get it all streamlined and managed to dart and x-ray 5 baby elephants that had lame legs, and 3 of them, the mothers were present. 2 of them, the mothers, we couldn't tell who was the mother, so we couldn't put a collar on. And so, but the fact is that we managed to get the x-ray material and the blood work on the elephants, but we got 3 of these lame elephants and 3 of their mothers collared, and so we can monitor their movements, and just it's all also just extra data for national parks for their research. But the x-rays themselves are, the plan is, I haven't heard from Carl, he's the vet who was with us on that. Was downloading the x-rays and sending them off to an expert in the States, and we haven't had word back from that. So Carl is a horse vet in Zimbabwe. He's been a vet for probably 35 years, 35, 40 years, been in the game for a long time. But he was suggesting, from what he could read from the x-rays, is that the injuries are all random events, and he thinks that because some of them are a front leg, elbow, left or right, or a back leg, and there's no rhyme or reason, and there's no continuity in what was happening with these baby elephants. So he was thinking that it was random traumatic events that were causing the lameness, and that the fact that we had seen about 20 of these guys was really concerning us. So at this stage, we're waiting for an expert to check it out and see if they can figure if there is any common cause or something like that, which may even be treatable. But from the blood work that was taken, all the blood's normal. There was no infection, nothing like that. So we haven't really concluded much from it. And then in the meantime, with the drought and the peak of the season, and people talking about, there's been a lot of reports about these elephants from general public and just visitors to Mana pools taking pictures, because they're very visible in Mana. And then, but we've been now getting images sent to us from Wangi National Park, where there's obviously many more elephant. It's a much bigger park with a lot larger elephant population, and there's very similar things happening there. So it could be something, or it could just be, like the vet was saying, it could be a random traumatic event that's causing these injuries. So we're not sure yet.
I would imagine that makes the calves much more vulnerable in a drought situation too.
Yeah, it does. We think one has been eaten by lions. One of the calves that we x-rayed, because he was very lame, and we haven't seen him since. But the other ones we are monitoring, because they, like I said, the mothers have got collars on, so we can see there's movement of them, and we have seen 2 or 3 of them since we collared them, or since we x-rayed them a short while ago.
Boswell still staying in the park, or is he doing more walkabouts?
No, you mentioned that just 2 days ago he was out of the park in the hunting area, but he didn't stay long. He just went for a day or 2, then came back, and we saw him. He was just behind camp, and we saw him a couple of days ago, He's moved back into the park. Fred, it was strange. It seemed like, I don't know what happened, but Fred, Bruce, MP, Tusker, Stompy, Boswell, they all went across out into the hunting area. There were like 5 elephants in the hunting area. And as far as I know, there weren't any elephant hunts on, but Fred went across to Zambia, which is unusual, but he has done it before. Early in the season, in like January or February this year, he went across to the same area, and coincidentally, his collar twisted, and we weren't getting any downloads. So I thought the worst, that he had been shot on the Zambian side. But a few weeks later, the collar righted itself, and he started getting downloads, and he was back in. He crossed back over the Zambezi and went back in the park. So it's just interesting to see all these movements of these animals, and all those bulls that were in the hunting area, they're all back in the park now. So that's all good. It's always a relief when they come back.
Hi, this is Bill. I don't want this to be a downer, but I'm just wondering, is there any thoughts about how the political situation might affect the park and the country over the next few years?
Yes, I'm not sure, Bill. I'd leave that. I'd leave that to you guys.
Okay,
to
fair
the
enough.
Americans. I'm not sure. You know, to be honest, I've been in the bush since during the elections and since the elections. We obviously pick up a lot of stuff, but I'm not hearing much locally about our government's reaction to the results and all the rest of that. So I'm not sure what our local reactions are going to be to that.
Mhm.
Thing
Wait.
going. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. I'm muted. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Barbara, sorry?
How is the anti-poaching going? I haven't heard much. Sounds like it's been pretty successful for stopping.
that ticks over. You know, thanks to everybody who's a member of the Tusker Ranger Fund. That really is what keeps the anti-poaching going, which has always been the core of what we do. Everything else we've spoken about with the collaring and research and human-wildlife conflict and everything like that, is all branches of our work which have stemmed from the core of what we do, which is anti-poaching, and that goes on all the time. You know, as we were developing our anti-poaching sort of strategies, we've got remote bases scattered throughout the park, and we've got vehicles operating in those remote areas with some of our scouts. And so that carries on. At the moment, one of our guys is in Chawari, which is a hunting area to the east of Monopools, and there's a big operation going on there at the moment with 3 bases. 3 of the big stations in the Zambezi Valley have moved all their rangers to the station in the hunting area there, and they're doing big ops, deploying rangers. A lot of it for anti-poaching, but to be honest, a lot of it is also gold panning. That area is notorious for getting gold panners. So they're chasing gold panners out. I'm not sure if there's been any arrests, but it's chasing gold panners is something that we've grown into, which we don't really want to have to do, because that kind of law enforcement it should be the police's job, to be honest, not our job. And even though they are destroying the environment or having an effect on the environment, they're not big on poachers, but they're having an effect on the environment, which is what we're trying to protect at the end of the day. But it's a very sensitive and political issue with the gold, because gold, if any of you haven't watched it, there's a very interesting documentary put out by Al Jazeera called The Gold Mafia, and that explains very well the gold situation here in Zimbabwe and what a sensitive issue it is. So even though we don't really want to get involved in that, we've been roped into it. And we'd rather just do our anti-poaching and keep people out of the park for those reasons rather than for the reasons of gold panning.
If it's not one thing, it's another, huh?
Yeah, but if you just have a look at that it's a 4-part series. You don't have to watch all 4 parts. If you watch the first 10, 15 minutes of the first part of the series, it gives you a really bit of an interesting background onto the gold situation in Zim. And basically there's no rules on where you can sell your gold to, or no accountability of where you got your gold from. If you got gold, you can sell it to anybody you want without a permit or whatever. So any kind of gold. So it's really has stimulated a lot of the gold panning in protected areas.
What's the name of the program again, Nick?
It's called Gold Mafia, I think it is. It's on.
Okay.
It's an Al Jazeera. It's on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey Nick, when you said the camp's about to close down, and I'm guessing that's most camps in Mana are closing.
Yeah, some have already closed. Yeah.
So I know your patrols and Bushlife Conservancy, goes year round, but when all the tourists leave and all the camps and the guides and managers leave, does that create any issues because there's less people to spot poachers?
Well, yeah, touch wood, it hasn't. Well, but so yeah, Dylan, though, we've been okay in Mana, like I said, thankfully, touch wood, But where we have had some issues is the hunting area to the west of Mana, called Nyakasanga, and there's been elephants poached there. It's mostly a rainy season thing. It's quite an inaccessible area during the rains. There's lots of thick, loamy soils, which are almost, really limit access during the rainy season. And on the Zambian side, opposite that, there is a large community living there. So we do get people coming across by canoes and sneaking in and poaching elephant, but not in large numbers. I mean, I think it's certainly like less than 10 this year, maybe even less than that, but under 10. So we're talking small numbers in comparison to the 1,000 elephant that live there, for example. But their aim is to try to get the meat out. So they'll make a camp there and they'll camp there by the elephant, get all the meat and move the meat out. The meat is more valuable than the ivory these days. So they become more meat hunters than ivory hunters.
Hmm.
So Nick, how is the family doing? And by that, I mean the whole family, staff and Des and the kids. How is everybody doing this season?
No, good. Everybody's fine. We're down to just trying to think. We've got maybe 10 or 12 guys in camp at the moment. So when we're really busy, we've got between 20 and 25 guys. So it's pretty quiet. A lot of the guys are on days off, and then they will come in and look after camp while we're closing up. But yeah, my son Jed's at university, and in the UK in the second year. My daughter's got a year to go at high school, and I don't know if everybody heard, but my health wasn't great in August. I had a minor heart attack, and then I had a stent fitted, and so I took it easy. Desiree was managing camp, so I came in and was managing camp with Desiree. I went to town for about 2 days, came back out, and then for about 6 weeks I was just helping out in camp, and then I started guiding again when you came out, Nancy.
Yeah, oh, okay.
You were my first trip after my what do you call it? What's it
Yeah.
called? My sabbatical.
Your first and second, since I went there twice.
Yeah. So then I've been guiding on and off since then, but still, yeah, not doing too much. Like I say, Henry and Mark are both in camp at the moment, guiding, and Desiree and I are just running camp and taking it easy.
Good.
Glad to see you're doing well. Says, because that was a little. You scared me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thanks for your messages.
Scared
I
us
know a
all.
lot of people say, "Well, what if something does happen to me? What's going to happen with Bushlife?" But Desiree really is such a backbone of the whole thing, and she's already doing all the wages, and between her and her mum, who also works for us in town, they do all the shopping with one of our other guys, Andrew. So all the food and supplies and everything like that, and all the payment for that, she manages all that kind of stuff. So all those kind of things are well taken care of with Desiree at the helm. And then my son's studying wildlife conservation at university. So, I'm hoping I can hand the torch down, and he can get more and more involved as he gets more experience and as he gets older. And so, hoping there's still a good, long, bright future for Bushlife Conservancy.
Yes, indeed. What more can we do? What new programs do you think would be helpful, or do we just keep plugging away?
No, well, we're gonna plug away at our we're looking at buying a new Land Cruiser, which I think that's all part of our of our next drive that's coming up, our fundraising drive. So we're looking at buying 1 or 2 Land Cruisers. Well, we're just going to try and keep it to the basics. We're going to do other projects, like the hay was something that was which was a new project for us. We've never done that kind of thing, but we're going to keep on doing we want to keep our base strong, which is anti-poaching. Keep maybe get a couple more drivers, more scouts, and keep that base, which was like I say, is our anti-poaching. That's started off as our main focus. We want to maintain that, and then keep on doing our other work with the human wildlife conflict in particular, and the conservation clubs in the schools. But I think we need to also just maintain our core focus from where we started on the anti-poaching, which is what we're planning on doing.
Nick, speaking of the schools, is Sophia gearing up for another wildlife quiz, or what's going on with the clubs?
Yes, so the schools are about to close. Our academic year is January to sort of late November, and so some schools are closing up already. Depends on whether you're writing exams or not. All of our exams are October, November, and some of the kids don't go back to school after they've written exams. But there's a few of the years that will continue up until the end of November. And Sophia's planning a quiz. So we're looking at, we sponsored the day with food and drinks and some prizes, and there's normally a football game or a netball game for the ladies involved, and so we normally will buy like uniforms or a couple of netballs and footballs and that kind of thing. So that is in the books for before the end of November, probably.
Nick, would we ever want to consider something like a scholarship, based on, one of the students showing an exceptional interest in the conservation efforts, or do you
Yeah,
think
I think that would
this,
be a great idea. You know, there's a local university in Chinoy, which is part of the community where we work with, and our national parks regional offices based there. It wouldn't necessarily just have to be there, but Chinoy University do have a strong wildlife section, and there's also a university in Bulawayo in the southwest of the country called NUST, which is a natural, it's a natural science based university, a lot of wildlife degrees and that kind of thing going on there. So that would be something that we could definitely look at for some bright spark who's looking at going to university.
I mean, what's the tuition kind of run for something?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, but I can certainly look that up.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I mean,
Yeah,
part of the succession planning. I mean, JED's,
Yeah,
that's fabulous, but you're gonna need more, right?
I don't think it'll be outlandishly expensive. Our local university's education is not very expensive compared to the States or the UK or something like that. But I can certainly let Beth know and put that in another newsletter or something coming up. You know, what the cost of a university scholarship would cost.
That's great.
We're probably approaching the end of your happy hour there, Nick. I wonder if others have questions before we let you get back to that whiskey that you haven't been able to sip on.
Yeah, I haven't had a sip. My mouth's getting dry.
Your fire's dying. I'm worried you're going to get really cold.
Yeah, I know.
I'm worried about that lion you heard.
Yeah, but can you hear it? It's just calling again now. But it's on the Zambian side.
Oh,
I'm newly nervous, having heard that the Lions were removing bricks from the wall. I was always like, oh, they see the tent as if it's concrete. Now I'm like not feeling so good about that.
So, no, I mean, it's very unusual, and that's why I mentioned it, because we were actually talking about it today, because one of the concepts about trying to protect livestock in a lion area is to literally just put a tent around it, a canvas wall, and herd the cattle in there. And as long as the lion can't see it, then it won't go for it. And it sees the canvas barrier, the canvas wall, as a solid barrier. So with these lions, like I say, they're very unusual, and that's part of the reason why a third of the pride was destroyed. One of them was actually shot trying to get freedom. He was loading a cage with a lion already darted and in it, and the lion came out the bush and almost grabbed him. One of the rangers shot it. And then, but the others were shot after they'd been relocated, and they came back into the area and started killing livestock again. That's when they were killed. So, but it just shows catching these lions in a cage can also be a bit tricky, a bit dangerous.
Sounds like Freedom
That
has
is
5
unusual.
lives.
Yeah.
He's had a few alarming events.
Oh, you have. Yeah.
well, with everything you went through with your heart attack and everything, you're looking wonderful and you're looking great, Nick.
Oh, thanks, Barbara.
So what?
Deirdre's got me on a strict diet.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that. I wasn't going to say anything, but
I had one of those stints about 5 or 6 years ago. Piece of cake, no worries.
oh, that's right.
Okay.
It was 90% blocked. And it was what, 3 months before we came into camp?
Oh, serious?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know. The more of these stories I hear, the more encouraged I am. But it was a bit of a shock at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sophie's keeping you on the straight and narrow with your diet.
No, well, yeah, kind of trying.
Probably everybody making sure he's on his diet.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the chefs in the kitchen, they're very good. They're like, they give me, if they don't give me any fried stuff, they prepare all my stuff separate, and yeah, I'm getting very well.
That's good. Is Chad coming home for Christmas?
I
Is
might be
Chad-
Is
losing
your
the
son coming
connection.
home from for Christmas?
We're not sure yet.
Oh.
We're going to go and visit him, and also my mum who lives there, and then we'll see if he comes back or not. But we're not sure when his program starts next year yet. So he might just stay there and not come home. Probably come home when his year ends in the end of May, sometime there, May, June.
Oh, okay. Is he used to the cold by now?
No, he's been lucky. The weather's been good so far.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. But it's coming. The cold's coming for sure.
Well, we're booking our flights next week, so we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hang in there.
I will do. Thanks, David.
Please tell Freedom and the rest of the team, just thank you very, very much for all they do. We know they're
Yeah.
literally risking their lives.
Yeah, I
So-
will do. Yeah, no, Freedom has just had a long couple of weeks with the hay deliveries, because he's been directing the trucks to where they need to be delivered, and having to deal with people. We've had one truck absconded with. The people were so desperate for the hay, they're like, no, we're taking this truck. So they took the truck off to their village, and they were so desperate, they wanted the hay, and anyway, so he's had to deal with all sorts of stuff. Trucks arriving at 2 o'clock in the morning and offloading it, and making
Oh my
sure
God.
that it gets to the right village and the right people, and dealing with the chiefs and all the rest of that. So he's having a well-deserved weekend at home at the moment.
Good.
Oh, good for him.
I just want to say it makes me feel so great to see this wonderful group that we all have become to support this wonderful mission. And I just want to thank you all individually, since I write a few letters, and it just makes me feel so good to see all of you so supportive of this.
Well,
And thank you, Nick.
thank you, Mara, for for all that you do. Really and truly.
I
Thanks.
love your pictures,
Everybody.
Nancy. This is like
Thank
a
you.
private slideshow today.
Well, I wanted Nick to feel a little jealous, because Dave Carson and I were in Maniples and we saw her.
Oh, jeez.
Good shot.
Nice.
Dave Carson.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I second what Mara says. I can't thank everybody enough for all your support over all the years that we've been doing this, and it really, it's really appreciated, and it means a lot. Thank you very much.